Damien
O'Reilly,
and I'm a member of the Irish Guild of Agricultural Journalists and a proud member of the
Audio is gone.
Ja, ik hoor Damien is afgezet.
Yeah.
Can't hear you, Damien.
Adrian, audio is gone. Damien is aware.
Okay. It's one of these days, so I'm not the only one having technical problems. Hello, Hans, hello.
Hi, Roxanne, how are you doing?
Fine, and yourself?
Yeah, very good here.
Where are you based, Hans?
Ghent, Belgium.
Ah.
Yeah.
So you have probably the same kind of weather than I do.
Yes. It's still okay. They said it would thunder and stormy and whatever, but I don't see anything. So
No, me neither.
which is good. Yeah, we had a lot of echo in the background with Damien. Yeah, I
and
think
the Larsen effect too. It was really bad.
Take care. Maybe you're public now.
Well, I think Damien had two. I think he had two things open, and then I think you're in trouble. Of course, if you start two things, if you open two things on your computer, then you're really in trouble. So I think he has to close one of those two.
But also Roxanne is there twice.
Why?
There twice.
Yeah, there's one with and one without a video.
Yeah, you have to be careful, Roxanne, because then you get echoing.
No, I know, but let me close.
I get a signal from a colleague that we are speaking public now.
Thank you. Well, we're not saying anything nasty, so
no.
Hide non-video participant. This is weird. Okay. I know what's happening. I gave my link to my colleague Claire, and probably she appears as Roxanne Feller. That's why.
No problem.
Claire, can you confirm you're online? Claire Carlisle? No, it's not that. But do you hear any echo when I speak?
Yep, it's good.
Okay, then it'd be my colleague Claire online or something.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you. I hope you're hearing me loud and clear. This is Damien O'Reilly, and it is Take Two. Greetings from sunny Dublin in Ireland. It's just gone midday. I apologize for the slight false start, but hey, it is the times that we actually live in. And interestingly, it's the subject of our conversation today about the crisis that we're in at the moment, which is forcing us to have Zoom events like this and webinars. You're joining us from all over Europe and indeed across the world. I'm a member of the Guild of Agricultural Journalists in Ireland, and I'm also a proud member of the ENAJ, which is organising today's event, and the International Federation of Agricultural Journalists, colleagues of which are also joining us for this webinar. Now, we'll have about an hour, a little bit more, to hear from our presenters today, and we're delighted that we have some wonderful speakers. We have three in all. You will have the opportunity to pose questions to them in the various different locations at the bottom of your screen there. So please don't be shy. You are journalists after all, so do ask the questions. Each speaker will have about 10 minutes to present. Some will have PowerPoints, and then we will have a few minutes to put questions to them after that. But before we begin, I'm going to head from Dublin over to Holland to introduce the president of the ENAJ, Mr. Hans Siems.
Okay. Thank you, Damien. And good afternoon to everybody to this third webinar of the ENAJ, the European Network of Agricultural Journalists. ENAJ celebrates this year its 10th anniversary. Without this network, this webinar wouldn't be possible. INAI is the umbrella organization of 21 national guilds in total, representing about 4,000 journalists and communicators. For this webinar, we invited the members of the World Organization IFAJ too. Welcome, everybody. I will briefly try to introduce this webinar to you, together with a PPT, with a PowerPoint, if it's possible. If not, I do it without it. The theme is challenging, stopping the next pandemic, how public health can benefit from the veterinary contributions. It will be moderated, as you have seen, by Damien O'Reilly, member of our management team, an ex-journalist of RTE Radio Ireland, presenting every Saturday an agricultural program on the radio with a huge number of listeners. Now I come to the speakers. Welcome to our speakers. Thanks a lot in advance. I can promise you these 3 speakers are excellent speakers. You can find their CVs on our website, inai.eu. First, Roxanne Feller, the Secretary General of Animal Health Europe, a non-profit association representing manufacturers of animal medicines, vaccines, and other animal health products in Europe. She will give an overview. Her theme is how One Health collaboration can help prevent the next pandemic. After her speech, questions are possible. Then Hans Nouwink, professor at Ghent University, Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, Laboratory and Virology, will take the digital floor and he will build a virological bridge between animal health and human health. His theme is successful control of viral diseases in animals, excellent examples for human health. There will be questions again. Last but not least, the third speaker is Rens van Dobbenburg, President of the Federation of Veterinarians of Europe. Again, like INAI, a European umbrella organization representing 46 associations of veterinarians in Europe. They represent the views of the members on animal health, welfare, and veterinary policy issues. COVID-19 is a zoonose. Rens van Dobbenburg will talk about an essential part of this webinar. His theme is there always will be zoonoses. Again, followed by questions and a last round of questions to all the speakers. That brings us to the key questions of what this webinar is about. Because of course, the COVID virus, which until now caused more than 3.4 million deaths and tens of millions patients worldwide. COVID is a virus and a zoonose, which you see in animal health and in human health. What you see is that animal virology is ahead of human virology with their approach to animal disease control. So the main questions are, what can human virology and their fight against diseases learn from the veterinary world? And can virology from both sides prevent a new pandemic? This webinar is not only about COVID, but also about the role of zoonoses which is a disease of infection that is naturally transmissible from vertebrate animals to humans. I didn't know the impact figures. Did you know of all diseases known to man, around 60% are zoonotic? You know the topics in publicity: SARS, Ebola, Zika, MERS, and now COVID-19. But there are 200 more. Another astonishing figure: it is estimated that globally about 1 billion cases of illness and millions of deaths occur every year from zoonosis. It's an immense problem and task to solve. COVID-19 learns that we have to increase the effort extremely to prevent that we will get a new disaster like COVID. That's why I finished my presentation with a keynote from Paul Stoffels, Chief Scientific Officer of Johnson & Johnson. He said, "We must become as good in detection and anticipation of new pathogens as we are now in building weapons and airplanes." Thank you, and I give the floor back to Damien O'Reilly.
Hans Siems, thank you very much indeed for that, and a lovely introduction indeed. Okay, you did mention the three speakers, and it's ladies first, because we're going to go to the Secretary General of Animal Health Europe, Roxanne Feller, who is going to talk to us about One Health, and how One Health collaboration can help prevent the next pandemic. So for the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to hand over to Roxanne.
Thank you very much, Damien. I'm very happy to be here. And before I start my presentation, you see my text? You see my presentation?
Yep.
Good. I would like, since you kindly explained who I was, I'd like to explain who I am representing today. I'm representing the voice of the animal health pharmaceutical companies. There are 12 of them that are direct members of Animal Health Europe, ranging from global companies to family-owned companies developing generics, vaccines, new technologies. Some of them are what we call One Health, because they also produce human medicines like Boehringer, Ingelheim, MSD, and Orion. So we have a big variety of companies. We also have membership through our 19 associations. Some of them are group, region, for example, but all together we. So our objective as Animal Health Europe is to ensure that there's ready availability of a wide range of animal health products throughout Europe, and of course through our global association throughout the world. So I think it's important you see where I'm coming from, and that sets the scene of my presentation. So, I mean, One Health is a concept, and I've been working on it for many years now, that in fact is very easily brought down to three basic elements, which is the interconnectivity between the animal health, the human health, and the environmental health. I think you mentioned that very well, Hans, talking about the zoonosis, which go from animals to humans, but also the other way around. We're not only the only culprits. So what this is important is this ever going, I would say, double infinity sign, is that they're all interconnected, and what will affect one will ultimately affect the others. And of course, if you look into the literature, you have many different definitions, either from the FAO, from CDC, from OIE. But really, if you keep those three elements in mind, you've got the One Health concept clear in your minds. Without wanting to be redundant, but I will continue to highlight why does it matter for us, for society, for policy and decision makers to consider animal health, not alone, but it's in globality. It's like you've very rightly said, 60% of all diseases are shared with animals. 72% are emerging from wildlife, which is also very important. And then you can see on our map the different transmissions between wildlife and then down to the human. And also the emerging diseases over the past 40 years, and this is where the environmental aspect comes in, have mostly resulted from encroachment into wildlands and demographical changes. So everything is linked. That's why we matter as much as the other two parameters of the One Health principle, concept, approach. They're all the same. So One Health is, of course, not just about about disease transmission. Of course, we'll go back into that later, but just be reminded that One Health means also that when you have healthy animals, or only healthy animals, actually can enter the food chain. So healthy animals has a direct impact on food safety, and which has a knock-on effect on food security. If your food is not safe, you cannot put it on the market, and then you might be in a situation where you cannot offer food for consumption. So a couple of analysis we've done as Animal Health Europe in where we believe things went wrong with COVID-19. And then we'll look at the lessons learned and see how we can overcome these. I think public health systems have planned and prepared to respond to pandemics in the past, but those efforts have often focused primarily on human-related public health and clinical response rather than on prevention. I'm not talking about vaccination campaigns, I'm talking about pandemics of emerging diseases. I think the second problem that we notice is that human, veterinary, and plant and vet environmental health systems have historically functioned in isolation one from the other. And I can say I think they still are, unfortunately. And then there's a big barrier to sharing information, to sharing funding, goals, priority. And I think this whole process has contributed to failure to predict, prevent, and respond to this pandemic in particular. And if we don't make changes, it'll have the same impact in the future. So this is an opportunity. You always have to see the bright side, that's in my nature anyway, to reorient our systems, all our systems, to better be prepared for the complex of the One Health challenge that we'll inevitably face again, unfortunately. So what are those recommendations that we would put forward as Animal Health Europe for controlling emerging infectious diseases? First would be to build effective collaboration between the animal health and the human health sector. We have some very good collaboration, but it's not structured, it's random, and it's on a case-by-case basis. Improving surveillance for early detection of diseases threats in humans. We have a lot of knowledge as animal health sector because many of the diseases touch, in particular, livestock, so food-producing animals, is managed by the EU, and there's an incredible area of tools that are put in place to detect early detection of diseases, and a step forward is a disease that are threats in humans. Also, maybe strengthen the laboratory diagnosis capacities for novel pathogens. A third recommendation would be to improve disease case management and infection control, and finally, to develop epidemic preparedness and early response, of course, capacity for emerging noses. So early detection is of no use if you don't have then early response. The next, so what has been done, because I think we're not the only ones having highlighted lessons learned and then doing something about it. There is, at global level, during the pandemic, I think it was almost the first in such a concerted way that the WHO, the OIE, the FAO, and the United Environmental Program that worked together. So adding that environmental item was very important. There's also One Health high-level panel expert that was set up in spring 2021. So that's just a couple months ago. Well, in fact, we are spring still until a couple of days. There's also 25 governments and WHO that have called on an international pandemic preparedness treaty. So again, things are moving at the global level. And in November 2021, we know that WHO host a meeting to consider a treaty. I'm almost finished. I want to give time for discussion. This is my last slide. Where should we take action? Again, is working with one another towards shared goals, the 3 C's. It's easier to remember, and all that with one same goal, to have a shared purpose, because it's only when we work together across people, animals, and environment can we reach our outcome for all. So I would just like maybe to add one more word before I thank you for having listened to me. I had the pleasure yesterday to listen to an event organized by FVE, where Rens is the president and he's here together present. And I think one of the main messages that came out here that I'd like to repeat and share with you is, I think what's essential is to work together in peacetime. That's really something that I learned from this great event yesterday, and I want to repeat today. If anything, let's work now before something bad comes again. Let's work in peacetime together. Thank you very much for your time. I'm very happy to answer any questions and to continue the debate with you later today. Thank you.
Roxanne, thank you very much indeed for that very interesting oversight there in relation to One Health. As I said, to anybody who's joining us late, you're very welcome along to this ENAJ webinar this afternoon on how public health can learn from veterinary medicine in preventing future pandemics. Roxanne, I just have one question in relation to the EU Commission. How does the Commission approach One Health?
Ooh, how much time do you have, Damien? No,
60 seconds.
I think the Commission is still in a learning process for 2 reasons. That it's not easy for them to think One Health yet. That's my opinion, very personally. Is first of all, we know that the Commission has the full powers on animal health. They have they are granted this role by the treaty. They're not by the for the human health. So that's already one thing that makes it hard for them to think One Health, because they don't have the same role to play. And the second thing, unfortunately, up to now, the only, at least that I can see, that concrete actions they're taking on One Health is only, not that it's not important, on antimicrobial resistance. And we would like them to see One Health as a, like I said today, as a much bigger concept, and not just focus their energies on, AMR. But again, it doesn't mean it's not important, but for me, it's not enough. They should be doing more. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering as well, how do you as an association, how do you implement One Health?
Oh, that's good, turning the question back on us now. Well, we do One Health in the sense that we acknowledge, first of all, the responsibility we have as an industry, that our role is we're not only helping animals when we're treating them or giving the tools to treat them with the vets and the farmers, but we're also doing some good to the humans and the environment. I mean, we talk about it. We also have One Health companies that help us, because they are able to think both ways. And I'm sure I'm forgetting one or two, but for now, that's what comes to mind with your very pertinent question.
Okay, Roxanne. Well, look, thank you very much for that presentation. Do stay with us, and indeed, if any of our participants have questions, they can go to the Q&A at the bottom, send them to us, and we might come back to you a little bit later on if anybody has any follow-on questions for you, Roxanne. But for the moment, thank you very much indeed. Now we're going to move on to our next speaker, who is Hans Noing, who's professor at Ghent University in the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine and in the Laboratory of Virology as well. So Hans, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. So I will talk today about successful control of viral disease in animals, and which are excellent examples for humans. So I'm a real veterinary virologist, exceptional, because most of the virologists in veterinary environment are more high-tech molecular people, but I'm still busy with animals, and I'm very interested in the interaction of viruses with those hosts. And as you can see, I'm not only dealing with a pig, but also with other animals, including shrimp, and I'm also interested in doing some research on human diseases. So I have a broad look on these interactions. Recently, I think you know that COVID-19 has been misused by a lot of reporters to damage feed animal production, and I was always very furious about that, because a lot of those things were based on fake news. Very important news without references, which is bad, of course, and a lot of, and that's even worse, news based on no or wrong data. And I can give here, and especially let's say our social media and internet is very bad at that level, because everybody can spit whatever they want on the internet, and everybody is sensitive to that, starts to read. And as you can see here, there was coronavirus world leaders most urgently phase out factory farming to cut future pandemic risks, says report. So want to avoid pandemics, eliminate factory farming. So a lot of people were just blaming farmers that they were a cause of all diseases worldwide, and I do not agree with that. So and these are some facts that I give. So this is not fake news. That is that there are always viruses jumping in between species, and this is not only, let's say, from a pig that is in a stable towards a human being. It's from different species. It's also happening from humans to animal species, which everybody forgets. We are always so superior that we forget. For instance, the pandemic H1N1, originally coming from pigs, but has been spread by humans and is now entering into pigs. So we are the cause of let's say, the pandemic H1N1 in pigs. So just to tell you that everything is not black and white, but that there are gray zones. Very important that these jumps are extremely rare, because viruses are very species specific. So you have to be lucky as a virus to jump from one species to another. When a virus arrives in a new host, it may lead to an aggressive outcome, because this is also wrongly, stated. People always think virus is bad, and when you jump, it will be worse, and it will kill the other host. That's not true. So most of the time, it's a calm jump and a spread without a lot of disease. And a very important one, number 3, is most jumps come from viruses originating from wild animals. And this is one that we should really consider carefully, especially because we have a full control of farm animals, but we have totally no control what's happening in the wild. And contacts with wild animals are increasing in time, and this is due to the fact that man takes in nature. So if you look around, everything is destroyed. Man is just getting into those bushes and try to try to get some economical advances out of that. But during their activities, they get in contact with a lot of wild animals. And very important to mention also is that both farm animals and humans, and this is the One Health also, are main victims of viruses coming from the wild. If you talk about African swine fever virus, for instance, this is not coming from our domesticated pigs. This is coming from the warthogs and bush pigs jumping into our wild boars and just, causing a lot of damage in the domesticated pigs. So everybody is looking, if you concern African swine fever, looking to the domesticated pigs and blame the farmers, but they're just the victims. They're not the cause of the disease. Also, both farm animals and humans are main victims of viruses coming from the wild. And as the number of people and number of feed animals increase, and this is a logical mathematical point, of course, the risk of interspecies transmissions will increase. So there's no way back. There's only a future for a lot of jumps, and so we should be aware of that. And very important also, will viruses spread from animals to humans? The answer is easily yes. Of course, if you will ask me as a virologist which ones and which animals and when, I think no one knows. For that we have crystal balls, but I don't think we should believe them. So important is to prepare both farm animals and humans against disastrous disease outbreaks coming from a wild source. And this is the common goal that we should have, and we should not blame each other. So we should work together. And how? And there I come. We should learn from each other, and especially the human sector should listen and should look what we already did, let's say, on farms. And I want to take you in a kind of a story that will show that the animal farming is at top level at this moment. I will even show the way how to do it. First of all, identification and biosecurity. Every farm has a number, every pig has a number, every transport has a number. So this is extremely fully controlled. So if something happens, it can go back to an animal level and a farm level. So this is extremely important. If there's transport, it's exceptional. You know, you don't, for fun, you don't drive around with your lorry full of pigs just to show them the environment. So this is extremely oriented, and this is not for fun. Very important is also to mention that the farms are working extremely hard on getting isolated. So you should not get on a farm without, you know, opening a fence. Very important is, you know, disinfection procedures. Nowadays, the best farms all have already a shower system so that you don't get into a farm without showering. So these are, and this is the trend for not the future, but already for good farms at this moment. So everything is well controlled. And the biggest thing for a farmer is try to exclude virus introduction. So they know if you get a virus in, this is not done because this is bringing you down at an economical level. So this is already in full control. So let's compare the let's say the pig farming with human beings. And this is a very important message, and that is what people should be aware of because they are not aware of. So if you look before and after COVID-19, we have houses, so we have numbers. We have also identity cards. So at that level, it's very similar to pigs, but then it all stops. So if you see the behavior of human beings, there's totally no control where you go to, what you do there, and what you bring back. So a human being, so this is a beautiful film here that you can see. These are day and night activities of planes. So this is one day, and if you look to that, this is you become sick if you see this. So this is not done. If you look how we control everything with pigs, this is how we spread viruses all over the world as human beings, and where we should have a picture of what's happening with animals. So we should behave. And this is a very difficult one because, you know, human beings, freedom, privacy, and so on and so on. So you're allowed to pick up a virus in Australia and bring it, will not be within one day because the flight is too long, but to bring it in your environment as soon as possible. And this was a beautiful example. COVID-19, this was a disaster. That was a spread within months, and this is not done. So if this would have been a pig, this would not have happened in that at such a level. So just to show that instead of blaming farmers, they should have a look how good they are taking care of their animals and how good they want to keep out virus. So we have a lesson to learn here from farmers and farm environment. Then the next point I want to say from a veterinary point of view, that's the surveillance and diagnosis of viral diseases. So in time, we had different techniques: virus isolation, antigen detection. Nowadays, it's PCR. So it is going for the genome. And now this is even a spin-off from our lab. We go for full sequencing for diagnosis. So whenever you have material, we can go for the full virome and bacteriome in one sample. So and this is already commercially available. So this means that and I can tell you we have already activities in Belgium, the Netherlands, and Germany, and already a lot of contacts with companies that want to send material. So this is already fully active. And the reason for that is we need it. There's an urgent need for that because in veterinary medicine, finding the etiology of infectious diseases and determining antibiotic resistance is extremely important. And when we look to this, we're on top of the human medicine because we want to treat with the correct antibiotics. And this is even required in a lot of countries. So you cannot take whatever antibiotic. You really have to show there is a need for an antibiotic and that you can use it. Very important also is that we have a large array of vaccines. Also nowadays, a lot of autogenous vaccines. So we really can start using some of them. We can adapt vaccination strategies. So we are working in the veterinary world with a strong diagnosis and a strong way to approach treatment of these pigs or to prevent diseases in those pigs. If you look to human beings, they had also the same evolution in diagnostic: virus isolation, antigen detection, PCRs also. But if you look to the full sequencing, this is not commercially available. This is only active at certain centers, certain universities, And from time to time, if it is necessary, they will do a full sequencing. But this will not be for next year. This will take a long time before they will start commercial activities for diagnosis of infectious disease in humans. And the reason for that is very simple. So in human medicine, finding the etiology of infectious diseases and determining antibiotic resistance is not that important. It's not necessary. If you go to a doctor, and I'm very furious about that, if you go to a doctor, he's always talking about flu, which can understand, but he doesn't know which virus it is. I can tell you 10 viruses can be listed as the base of a flu, but they don't care about that. And then the worst case is stomach flu. So that's an intestinal problem. They call it also flu, but that's down under. And they have they don't see the reason why they should make a diagnosis. This is totally different from what is happening in the veterinary world, especially in the feed animals. So there's no routine diagnosis. And a very important thing is there's no refund of simple diagnosis by health insurance funds. So they don't. So if you want to do a diagnosis, you have to pay for it, and there's no payback by the health insurance funds. Can you imagine? Can you understand this? When we're already in 2020, and there's no refund of diagnosis by the health insurance. I can tell you, if they would do diagnosis in a correct way, there should be a much better use of antibiotics, and there would be a much better identification of problems, and there would be a lot of more. There would be many more vaccines available in the field. So treatment of antibiotics, you know that they will wait. You have a viral infection, they say, even they don't know it. It could even be that you start with a bacterial infection, but they say it's a viral infection, and you have to wait. I have been ill last year for 3 months, and this was due to a bacterial infection. And if I would have been treated from the very beginning, I would not have been suffering for 3 months. And I have now a coworker who's experiencing this year also a lot of problems. He didn't get antibiotics from the doctor. Wait. And he was in such a bad condition that he really required to get some antibiotics. And then after a few days, he was already much better. So this is not done. And this is, if this is human medicine, then I don't know what level they want to reach, but this is not done. Also, their biggest problem is they don't have a change in prevention. So they have their, let's say, a scheduled vaccination schedule, but there's not a lot of flexibility. So this also should be changed, just like in veterinary medicine. There should be a much more flexibility to use vaccines. And why not? Even thinking in the direction of auto vaccines. Concerning vaccination campaigns and marker vaccines, I can tell you, I give you a list. I will not go over all these viruses, but we have a lot of experience with, eradicating, not only just controlling, but eradicating some viruses. And a few very interesting ones are the Ojeski disease virus and infectious bovine rhinotracheitis virus. They are just herpes viruses. You can compare them with herpes simplex virus 1 and herpes simplex virus 2. Just to tell you, there are no vaccine available at this moment in human medicine, although these viruses are not soft ones, so they should be, if possible, eradicated. And it's easy. You can use it. You use your GE negative marker vaccines. I'm convinced this could also work in human medicine. In humans, we had 2 success stories. That smallpox, of course, got away, and polio should also be controlled within the next years. So this is important to mention, that we have a lot of experience and that we're damn good. And that there's a very good attitude of farmers. If they go in such an eradication program, they're not messing up the things. They're just following some rules. And finally, as a country, we can say we got rid of these viruses. Important is also to mention that farmers try to get more and more in the direction of high health, try to use specific pathogen-free animals. So it's better not to have the virus circulating around than to have it and to try to control it by vaccination. And in the future, there are a lot of activities now in launching resistant animals. For PRRS, it's already existing in the US, and they're busy with that also in China. African swine fever, not yet present, but people will work on that. So this is also I know that Europe is always talking about, we don't want to have genetically engineered animals. But if, let's say, the vaccines are not doing their job, you should do something. And I'm convinced that this direction will gain field and will be used in the future. And this is my last slide. So very important is the coordination on disease control. So when we look to the veterinary line, that is the OIE in Belgium, because this is the best. This is how I know it. I'm from Belgium, of course. We have Cienzano, which is the national, let's say, a coordinator. We have, and this is not the same with humans. So we have some kind of a regional lab also that is taking care of that. And then we have a lot of private laboratories, and a lot of those labs are taking care of diagnostics of infectious diseases. Not that much for biochemistry and hematology, but a lot of these labs are just trying to find out which virus, mainly virus, but also bacteria, are the cause of diseases. And then we have the diagnosis is this direction, and then we have the other interaction that's with companies, pharmaceutical companies, and also auto vaccine producers, because there's with the new technology that we have, I can give you a lot of examples. We're now heading for a lot of auto vaccines that can be used in pigs, so that we don't have to use antibiotics anymore. And this is extremely efficient, and this is working well. If you look to the humans, diagnosis, I told you already, these are some private companies. They're, let's say, 90% active with hematology and biochemistry, but they're not that much busy with diagnostics on viral diseases. And this is, what I'm not happy with that. So there should be much more activities at the level of diagnostics. And once you have diagnosis, of course, then the question is what to use. Nowadays, there are not a lot of vaccines. The only ones are the general diseases that we are vaccinated for when we're young. An exception is, of course, our influenza. But there are a lot of things that should be launched. These are the players. But I personally, I find that up till now, there are still too much antibiotics being used in humans, and they should, turn it back and and then take a look what is happening in the veterinary field. We have a huge reduction in antibiotics, because in the past, and that was of course not good in farmings, we were just using a lot of antibiotics in a preventive way, and this of course should be stopped. And this is stopped nowadays in Europe, which is extremely good. But we go further, so we don't stop there. We just go further, and we want, even for diseased animals, we want to have a correct antibiotic to be used. And I think this should be also the same in human medicine. So this is kind of, I made some comparisons, and I want to tease, that's also my task. I want to tease human medical doctors to think what we are doing and to compare it with what they're doing. And I think we should sit together, talk about it. And I think we should, as veterinarians, be proud of what we're doing. And we should also be proud on the control of disease that we are doing nowadays. And we don't deserve, especially not the farmers, to be blamed by fake news and some bad let's say even lies that they launch to farmers. So this is what I want to say, and I'll give the microphone back to the chair.
Hans, thank you very much for that. I was almost getting my bell ready to call you in, but thank you for that very passionate and detailed presentation. I do have a question though. How important, you speak there about, farmers getting a lot of blame, but of course, farmers, certainly in Europe and obviously in other parts of the world as well, they are confined and constrained by legislation. How important is legislation, let's say from an EU perspective, how important is legislation regarding how animals are farmed in preventing or in disease control?
Extremely important. So if there would be no, let's say, legislation and no rules, then I think it would be extremely bad. So everything is controlled by legislation, by people that are on top of the farming and show the way. And I have to say that there's not a lot of discussion with farmers. They know that this is for the best. So there's a lot of control on top of them. Sometimes, because you should know this is, this accompanied by a lot of administration. I think nowadays, farmers are suffering a lot by just filling in all those forms, and it's not an easy way life anymore. But they're fully convinced that when laws are set or requirements are made from legislation from Europe or from national legislation, that they have to follow it, and they know it's for the best. So there's not a lot of discussion. Of course, in the beginning, there are always a few that says yes, but at the end, everybody is following, and there are still at this moment a lot of controls ongoing, and in the future there are a lot of viruses that even will be eradicated. So I know that there is a lot of activity going in a good direction.
Okay, one quick question for you, which has come in from Daniel Plezu in Romania. Hello, Daniel. He wants to know what we should do with the fact that we don't have vaccines anymore for the avian flu in the EU. Those that previously existed are no longer authorized. Do you have a comment on that?
Well, I think this is also that's an attitude that you have to have from legislation, and the attitude is we should fully control. If you find antibodies, you should know that it is coming from an infection. So they really want to have a full control on the bird population, the poultry population. If something happens, they want to have a very fast reaction, and that's why at this moment it's more culling that they're putting forward. But this is all discussable. So if we look, for instance, in the past to whole cholera in the past was also stamping out no marker vaccines whatsoever. If you look, for instance, to Ujeski disease, that's more with marker vaccines, and that will be more a softer. So this will not be a mass culling. So times are changing. So I will not say that what we have now in poultry nowadays, that this will be forever. But this is now the attitude we have at Europe. But I think it could change in the future. It depends on. Now it's still controllable by culling, but it could be that if the thing runs out and you cannot control that, you have to use another system. So it depends, everything. But just to tell you, at this moment the attitude is culling, but it could change in the future if let's say the disease is overwhelming, and if you don't have poultry anymore to eat, I think we will have to use another system then.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much indeed, Hans Knowing, for that. And do stay with us. And waiting patiently, our final speaker this afternoon is Rens van Doppenburg, who's the president of Federation of Veterinarians in Europe. So I'm going to hand the floor now to you, Rens.
Yeah, thank you, Damien. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Adrian, can you set up the second slide, please? Yes, thank you. On behalf of the Federation of Veterinarians of Europe, FVE, representing over 300,000 veterinarians across Europe in 39 countries, working in all kinds of veterinary disciplines, I'd like to thank the European Network of Agricultural Journalists, and more specific Hans Siemens from the Netherlands, for the opportunity to speak with you about the veterinary contribution to fighting and sometimes even controlling pandemics of zoonotic diseases in an early stage. Next slide, please. A careful listener will notice I don't use the word avoid. To start with the same slide, I also will end with, as long as there are people and as long as there are animals, there have been, are, and will be zoonotic diseases with the potential of developing into, and will be with the potential to develop into an epidemic or even a pandemic. Full stop. Always will be. Next slide, please. The idea of a zero risk situation is utopia, and only there in the minds of those who believe in a makeable world that does not exist. The reason for this is simple. Humans are animals. Human animals and non-human animals share the same ecosystem and meet each other at the interface of it. By eating animals or animal byproducts, by farming animals, by using animals for work, leisure, or company, and so on. This includes kept animals as well as wildlife. And even in the most ideal circumstances, animals can still get sick by infectious diseases. And this is even for humans. And this is exactly why we still need hospitals, although we have good housing, good feeding, good husbandry, good hygiene rules, etc. And some of these infectious diseases are zoonoses, simply because this is how natural balances work. But very often, these outbreaks in animals never reach humans, because, for example, the outbreak is limited to a certain area where the affected animals live far away from people, or because the microorganism causing is not that virulent or contagious to humans. Next slide. Has nothing changed then? Yes, it has. Where in earlier days, diseases often faded out because of an isolated environment, this today is seldom the case anymore. Because of deforestation and climate change, meaning some animals and people migrate, and the integrity of animal biotopes being harmed. They become smaller with a substantially increased exposure to people. Because we travel, trade, and transport animals and goods all over the world, as we never did before. Because no area is without tourists. The chance of people contacting wildlife, including sick wildlife, has increased a lot. Animals and people meet more often and in larger quantities than they ever did before. The same happens with kept farm animals. Farmed animals and their products are transported intensively all over the world. Nowadays, often livestock is raised, hatched, fattened, or slaughtered far from the place where it initially was born. Another thing, the population of our planet is fast growing, up to 9 billion in 2050. Even more meaningful is over the same period, 50% of world population, as FAO states, will enter middle class. As a rule of experience, we know one of the first things these people will do is significantly increasing their animal protein consumption. Our farming capacity will follow this development and grow accordingly. And this results in even more contact between animals and humans. Another point of importance is that in earlier days, when a farm was affected by an infectious disease, zoonotic or not, we just simply isolated the farm until the disease faded out. Today, this is no longer the case. Because of globalization, everything is interconnected with everything. For some diseases, markets for animals and animal byproducts immediately will close because of the fear seropositive animals will cause economic losses in those markets. This unfortunately includes animals which may be vaccinated against the disease. And although often not to discriminate from an animal that had the disease, not causing the disease itself. A strange thing, even funny if it wasn't that serious, is that this non-acceptance regards to some diseases which we vaccinate against, but not to others. Of course, the only truth is vaccination is used exactly to avoid disease. The disastrous result of this is we sometimes need to kill massive numbers of healthy and often vaccinated animals. Most veterinarians accept culling of animals as an instrument to controlling disease. However, the culling of animals which are vaccinated against the disease because of market reasons instead of animal and public health reasons is not where veterinarians aim for. Next slide, please, Adrian. Fighting infectious diseases is part of our job. Veterinarians are well-trained professionals using their expertise to do so. By diagnosing in early warning situations, to identify a diseased animal or animals, to determine if the diseased animals can be treated, should be slaughtered, euthanized, kept out of the food supply chain, or more. If the animal itself should be considered, or, which is very often the case, the total herd or flock. If the disease is a notifiable one on national or even international level, to take appropriate measures to control, contain, and cure. Because every animal affected with an infectious zoonotic disease can turn out into an epidemic in humans, or even a pandemic. Like avian influenza, like tuberculosis, brucellosis, West Nile fever, chlamydia, anthrax, rabies, echinococcosis, hunter fever, Q fever, tularemia, leptospirosis, maybe like corona, and many, many more. Next slide, please. The nature of zoonotic diseases requires more than only the veterinarian to control it. An interdisciplinary approach is needed, and this is called One Health. And this is also already emphasized and stressed by Roxanne Feller and Professor Hans Nauwink. Medical doctors should be involved, pharmaceutical industry, logistic engineers, sometimes even the army in case of unstable areas. Only the One Health approach addresses all the different aspects of fighting infectious disease and creates the best chance for success. The work of a veterinarian starts before animals are sick. Most of our work, especially on farms, is focused on the prevention of disease. Prevention is better than cure, as once justly was an adagium of the European Commission. VETS work on this by advising the best conditions for animals, for their housing, climate, feed, genetics, by creating external and internal biosecurity on farms, by using vaccines in case this is the best remedy to avoid disease. The new EU Animal Health Law requires all farms to receive regular veterinary visits. This is crucial to build up a preventive approach, in which way the daily work of the vet may not avoid every pandemic, but it will minimize the development of one. A special group of contagious zoonotic diseases I'd like to draw your attention to is the one of bacterial diseases. Although hundreds of them can transmit from animals to humans, not all scientists classify them as true zoonoses, but they nevertheless fit into the definition. For treating bacterial diseases in animals as well as humans, we use a group of medicinal products called antimicrobials or antibiotics. There are not that many antibiotics, and their importance is valued highly. They help us in transforming life-threatening bacterial diseases in men and animals into diseases most curable. Of course, today we all know that the success story also has a downside. Bacteria can become resistant to one, more, or all available antimicrobials. One of the most important health threats of these years, according to WHO. And for that reason, use of antimicrobials should be responsible and restrictive in animals and humans. Also, veterinarians took their role in this responsibility. Since 2011, we measured veterinary antibiotic consumption via ESVAC, part of the European Medicine Agency, EMA. And in a group of over time 30 countries, we decreased the sales of antibiotic for animals with 34%, a third of the total amount. It brought Europe into a leading role regarding responsible use of antimicrobials in animals. Current and into forthcoming EU legislation will further confirm these veterinary responsible use principles. Despite that, there's a discussion going on to reserve groups of critical antibiotics for human and forbid veterinary use. On behalf of the veterinary community, I would strongly suggest only to put products on a banned list based on robust scientific evidence. Because every bacterial diseased animal should at least have the opportunity to be treated with the right antibiotic product. Not only for the sake of animal health. An animal is a sentient being with an intrinsic value, but also for the sake of public health. Next and last slide, please. Because people can get sick from bacteria transmitted by animals. So here, veterinarians do not only help to protect the individual, but in some cases also avoid a zoonotic epidemic, and by that even sometimes a pandemic. I thank you for your attention.
Rens, thank you very much for that very interesting presentation. You mentioned there about prevention, better than cure, vaccination over culling. And it takes me back to the foot and mouth crisis, which affected Ireland and the UK greatly, 20 years ago now at this stage. And I do remember at the time the question being asked, why do we not vaccinate our cattle against foot and mouth? And the answer was because we would lose our white meat status. In other words, that the market dictated that we did not vaccinate our animals. And instead, we ended up in a situation where we had to cull sheep and cattle. And there were very disturbing pictures, as you know, of those fire pyres in the UK in particular. What do you say to that market conflict with veterinary medicine?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Damien. Today it will be a little bit different because EU, under certain circumstances, allows the use of vaccination. But still, there's the question if trade organizations will stay buying and exporting these animals. And this is why we have to actively play a role, I think, as veterinarians, to make clear to the outer world that we vaccinate to avoid disease. And that means that vaccinated animals are safe animals to consume, so acceptable for markets to accept. And as I stated in my presentation, the strange thing, there's all kinds of vaccinations nobody cares about. And some vaccinations are, let's say, classified as not to be accepted. And I think we have to call out loudly that this is not the case, that vaccinated animals can be consumed or their animal byproducts in a safe way. But it has to be explained again and again.
Can I ask you as well your opinion on the elements of the EU Green Deal farm to fork policy and what impact that might have on the future, I suppose, of your business and obviously the impact it will have on the pharmaceutical industry and the veterinary industry, or what sort of an impact do you assess from that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. As FE, we welcome the Green Deal, although not everything is clear already. There is quite some aspects which we are enthusiastic about. For example, it states the importance of preventive measures other than using medicines to keep animals healthy and so to keep products safe for the general public to consume. And the other one is that there's also some discussion about a still more restrictive and responsible use of antibiotics, which we also welcome. But as I stated before, we need antibiotics to cure animals, not only for the sake of animal health, but also for public health. And we also will bring back that point on the table, well, in case somebody forgets, because it's one system. If you don't protect the animals, you also can't protect humans. So only antibiotics can be reserved for 100% for animals after robust scientific evidence. And this will be part of the discussion regarding the Green Deal also, because it's discussed there.
Okay, I'm going to ask all of you for a take-home message. So Roxanne and Hans, if you can have maybe a 1 minute, I suppose, take-home message for our audience here today. But before that, Rens, just back to you once again. Has animal health on farms in Europe, or indeed around the world, but generally if we're talking about Europe, has it improved or disimproved over the last 2 to 3 decades as farming methods have changed?
Yeah, my opinion, it has improved largely. I want to state the fact that if you look to the safety of food, to the availability of food, we never have been in a good position as we are today. I think this is very important. And of course, we'll check everything. We are responsible users of all kinds of methods and medicines and resources. Also means that sometimes you find something which is not good, but that's the result of good checking and good certifying. So I'm very positive about, if you compare the status of agriculture, health of animals, how farmers treat animals, how veterinarians treat animals, if you compare this with the status of a few decades away. But of course, there's always to win, and that's why you have farmers, that's why you have vets, that's why you have the pharmaceutical industry, the veterinary pharmaceutical industry. We all work for that aims.
All right, Rens, thank you for that. I will come back to you, as I said, momentarily, but we're coming to the end of this very interesting and timely webinar. At the end of, please God, the end of this horrendous crisis that has befallen all of us right across the world. We've all been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, and we sincerely hope that we will not see the likes of it again. And it is interesting as we move forward that in preventing something like this ever happening again, that maybe we can lean on the experiences of veterinary medicine to prevent the chances of another pandemic. We must also, I suppose, champion the fact that we have a vaccine, because there are a lot of, as you said, a lot of human conditions that don't have a vaccine, the common cold being one of them. So when we look back at the wonderful science and collaboration that happened last year in developing various vaccines, which we're all benefiting from now, I think it will also be looked back on as something monumental as well in history. So I'm going to go back first of all to you, Roxanne, just maybe for 45 seconds to a minute, just a take-home message for our members, as I said, throughout Europe, and indeed I've noticed some great colleagues from across the world who joined today's webinar. So Roxanne.
Well, thank you, and I'm glad to be talking to the world, because I would have maybe one first take-home message is hashtag animal health matters. That's one.
Okay.
Another one would be hashtag more than medicine. I'm trying to be modern here. That other hashtag more than medicine would imply that our companies are doing more than just the medical, the usual pharmaceuticals that you know about. They're developing in order to reach societal demands and increase the health of animals and increase the toolbox for the vets. Very many new technological advances, like diagnostics that was mentioned by Professor Nouwings. So animal health matters, and we are more than medicine. We're working towards different new roads to help animal health. And the third one is, let's work in peacetime together.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Roxanne, for your time. Hans Nouwing.
Okay. From my side, I think what I really would like to give as a take-home message, that is that it's important both for human medicine and veterinary medicine that we have a high level of biosecurity, a high level of vaccination approaches, and a high level of diagnostics. And as the veterinary world at that level is extremely skilled and can give some examples, it would be nice that everybody, if it concerns the One Health in long term, that we sit together to discuss it and try to find a solution for those things. And especially, you heard from Rens, the antibiotics. It's just like that the veterinarians are the cause of all the resistance, and this is not true. So the human medical doctor should open their eyes, start to think they're also the cause of resistance, and they should reduce their use of antibiotics, and therefore they should use good diagnostics, which they don't have at this moment. So these are things that we can exchange, and we should sit together and try to find some, interesting common features to come with solutions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you indeed for that, Hans. And finally, back again to you, Rens.
Yeah, thank you, Damien. It's not for nothing that I put one slide twice in my presentation. There always will be zoonotic diseases. There always will be epidemics, and sometimes they will turn into a pandemic. But vets can help minimize risk, development, and impact.
Okay, all right. That's short and sweet and very much to the point, and I appreciate that, Rens. Thank you to all of our speakers. I'm going to hand you back now to Hans Siems, who is the president of the ENAJ, to close this afternoon's proceedings. And I do wish to apologise to you for the slightly false start. It was completely my fault here in Dublin. I had a little bit of a technical breakdown at the start, but better late than never. I want to thank all of the participants for taking time to join us today, and as I said, to the speakers for the effort they went to present to us. So to close the meeting, from myself, Damien O'Reilly, goodbye, have a great weekend. Over to you, Hans.
Okay, thank you, Damien, for moderating this webinar. I want to thank the three speakers. What I've heard, it was a webinar of a very high level. And it was a kind of an eye-opener too, because we heard some facts and we heard some statements about the human and the animal health protection. What I was a little bit astonished was the great gap there is between animal health and human health protection, and it is very important that we try to build bridges between them. It's what it was said as the One Health. How do you call it? The One Health lesson we have to learn, that the One Health principle is very necessary to prevent diseases. One of the questions we had at the beginning is what can we avoid a pandemic? And the answer of this webinar is no, but we can reduce the changes, we minimize them if animal health and human health world is working together on solutions. And I think that's the message which comes out of this excellent webinar. I want to thank all the speakers again. I want to thank the moderator, and I want to ask the participants to this webinar, send in your publications so we can send them to the speakers, but we can send them to all of the world. It was very interesting. Thank you for being here, and I wish you a nice and good weekend. Thank you.